We are back. Another episode of Dynasty Theory, proud member of the DLF Family of Podcasts. I'm John Bauer. It's Tuesday night, guys. It's Tuesday night. We are joined by Dan Lamagna. What's up, Dan?
Gentlemen, as always, good to see you. Man, enjoying probably what feels like one of the most fun free agency periods ever. So I look forward to talking more about it tonight. And maybe we'll get lucky like Mitch and I did last week, JB, and get some breaking news like David Montgomery or, someone big might just sign tonight during the show. Who knows?
I enjoyed your episode last week. Of course, I Dan, you're telling lies to people live on the air that I was at the game. Somebody DM'd me and was like, "Hey, are you at the pick game?" I'm like, "No, I'm not."
They were half truths, JB. Mitch and I really didn't even know. Like, was he there? Was he watching on TV? And I think pre-show we were making funny because we're like, yeah, he's probably just watching it on TV. And you were, of course. So
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Anyway, being at the
we're
game
also
was a better
joined-
story.
I know. We're also joined by Mitch Sorensen. What's up, Mitch?
What's going on? At least we have news to talk about. That's good. We like this.
Yeah, I would say the first wave, second wave of free agency, it's in the books. We still have some guys that are trickling in here and there. But Ronald Jones, big signing by the Dallas Cowboys. Ooh-wee.
Dan's going to have his jersey up here in a week.
If I was excited, I would have opened the show with that, and I didn't. So that should tell you something.
What we're going to talk about tonight, it's not going to be Ronald Jones. At least I hope not. We are going to talk about a few guys that, a few different scenarios, right? They've risen in value for one of two reasons. Their landing spot in free agency, or where they currently are, there was a free agent to go elsewhere. All right. Or situations where they maybe fell in value and we don't believe it's warranted. So essentially, who is providing you a value at their current price tag? Who might be overvalued by the dynasty community and in a sense being a trap, and we should look to get out from them. So the timing here in between, like I said, that first and second wave of free agency and then the NFL draft, this next 5 weeks, it's going to be very important, and we're going to see a lot of swings both ways where we're looking to get out from certain players or we're looking to acquire them. Could it backfire? Heck yeah. I know I've put my flag on a few guys in the past that, whether it was due to free agency or making a preemptive move before a value swing that I was expecting in the NFL draft, and it just didn't come to fruition. Anyway, newly signed free agents that you believe should have risen in value. Maybe they did, but you believe they should have risen a little bit more. Maybe they didn't, and then as a result, being a tremendous value here after the first week of free agency. Who wants to get us started? Mitch, Dan?
We both have Penny written down, so I think it just makes sense with Rashad Penny. He's just going to such a good landing spot. I mean, the one thing we do need to be wary of is Bijan could end up there, right? There aren't a lot of teams in the first round who could go after running back. The Eagles are actually set up to draft Bijan. But outside of that, Rashad Penny is just in such an absolute great position that if he could just stay healthy, I mean, he's a better running back than Miles Sanders. And it's not because Miles Sanders is bad or anything. It's just Rashad Penny is very, very, very good when he's on the field. He just needs to stay on the field. And if that could happen, Miles Sanders' season from last year, that could be Penny and then some. So if I could get that at his lower cost that he is now, I'm all about it because I think his value should definitely be higher than what it is.
I like how Mitch went with the mutual guy on our lists. And, I started the show, JB and Mitch, saying, this has been just such an awesome free agent season. And I think it's more just because I'm like a kid in a toy store and, you get to update your rankings and we're figuring out the puzzle and everything. But then after I read the show notes and the names that I listed there, I'm like, this list, even the guys I'm excited about, and I'm saying there's an uptick. I don't know how excited I'm going to be starting kickoff. So whenever our listeners are listening to this is as of today, Tuesday, March 21st, based on our current studies where we see an uptick. And I do think Rashad Penny is one. I like that you mentioned Bijan, Mitch. That's probably why I didn't like the Rojo news, because I don't want anyone, peeing in my Cheerios here of my dream that Bijan is gonna be a Cowboy. I've got the jersey pre-ordered in my mind. But with the Eagles, and let me go back to Bijan. So I have heard so many analysts say, every person I talk to, everyone in the NFL I talk to, Bijan's top 7 on their list, top 5 on their list. So any team could surprise us, and the Eagles could be one of them. But what do we know about the Eagles? It's about scheme. They normally don't invest a lot into that running back position, and all signs point to Penny's going to be the guy. So check the system fit box for me. I'm not scared of Gainwell or Boston Scott rising in value. They've still got a great O-line. Penny does have talent. We know that. So if he stays talent, that scheme fit with a great O-line, with no threat on that roster, it should be an uptick.
Now, you're going to see the theme throughout tonight's episode is going to be me playing devil's advocate a little bit. And I know that's shocking because typically I like to keep things pretty calm over here. But Rashad Penny, it looks to be on paper an ideal landing spot, right? You have a running back that historically has not been that involved in the passing game. That's fully expected to continue here in Philadelphia, where we have Kenneth Gainwell and we have Rashad Penny replacing Miles Sanders. So I was thinking, how involved was Miles Sanders in 2022 in the passing game? I'm not necessarily saying you're going to be able to sub him in 1-for-1.
I know the answer to this because I had a lot of best ball bets throughout the year where he needed to get like 6 receiving yards. Dude lost me so much money.
So talking about replacing Miles Sanders ranked 64th out of 67 running backs with at least 100 routes run in 2022 with a 9.67% targets per route run. All right. So on 9.67% of his routes run, he received a target. He earned a target. That came in 64th out of the 67 qualifying running backs. So you can say that Rashad Penny is a better running back than Miles Sanders.
He is.
But I don't think there's any questioning who the better receiving back of the two is.
Rashad Penny.
Oh, Jesus. There's the dude that, how many targets does he have throughout his career?
I don't know. You're the numbers guy, man. I'm just telling you that, I'm not loving him because of his receiving profile that's coming in.
He has 27 receptions in 5 years.
Okay. And how much does Miles Sanders have?
But listen. So we've already capped his upside significantly, whether it's the scheme that we want to talk about, whether it's Kenneth Gainwell, Boston Scott being involved, but also just like we're going to talk about with so many of these running backs tonight, because most of these guys that we're going to talk about are running backs. When you look at NFL free agency and guys that might be a trap or value, it's looking at the running back position because for the most part, obviously wide receivers, a lot more options on each team. But with Rashad Penny, you have a 27-year-old running back that his dead cap hit. Let's say he were to be cut, okay? $600,000, a total salary of $1.3 million in 2023.
So why are they going to cut him? Just why would they cut him?
I'm not saying they're going to cut him. If they were, I believe I started that sentence with the word if.
I was just saying, why would they? I mean, I'm sure that they could, but I mean, if his contract is so low, what would be the point in cutting him in the first place if he isn't accounting for anything on the cap?
So you don't believe that we should be on this show discussing possibilities? You want to speak in certainties?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that he's going to be on the team outside of injury. He's going to be on their week 1 roster.
I didn't say he was going to be cut. This is where listening is key.
We need an intervention.
Hold on,
we need an intervention.
Dan, I'm not done.
He's hot. He's hot. Woo!
So you have a running back then that based on the scheme, okay, great. But we already said we were going to cap his ceiling. He has to avoid. There's a lot of running backs in the draft. Not everybody's saying avoid Bijan. This is a deep class. All right. I don't think there's any doubt Mitch and Dan simultaneously frowning full of that. Listen, Jake, all they do
Listen.
is frown. Now, with all of that said, you know, at 207, that's kind of where he's trading at right now.
Okay.
We have seen in the Patreon, in our Discord, people have successfully moved an early third for Rashad Penny. At that price point, sign me up. Because once we get into that running back 28 to 35 range and even below, you can mix and match and look at guys however you'd like. But please provide some context with your thoughts on Penny. Because you both like him, but how
Okay.
much? Why
don't you just ask? I mean, we could probably tell you.
So I will roll with that.
Wait. So things have to be. You can't just come out and provide your analysis.
I did. I said he's great, and I would love to buy him even at a higher value than he is now. You came out and said that his value is a 207. So then I already said that I value him higher than he is at that 207. So I've already provided the context. Dan, what do you think about this?
I also think we are answering John's questions on the show notes. Now, like Rashad Penny is not a guy I am excited about this year, but the question was newly signed free agents you believe should have risen in value. Rashad Penny rose from the dead a bit here because he died last year. It was this guy, Kenneth Walker. Look, I got this nice card in a pack game used jersey. Kenneth Walker, I got.
He died last year. Son. He died in 2021. What? He died in 2020. He died in 2019. Right. He died in 2018. Every single year. This guy, Easter's upon us. Easter season. He's like Jesus rising from the dead every third year, we'll say.
He's been gifted that life again. So he has risen. He has moved up my rankings. I think there's an upside, not pass catching upside to the conversation you gentlemen had, but the Miles Sanders role of last year. If he could achieve what Miles Sanders did last year, that's a win for Rashad Penny and anyone who gets him for giving up a third round pick or whatever kind of value you could get.
So how high do you go, Mitch?
205.
Okay, so the 207 is not that absurd.
It's a little bit. You can't say an early because that's like 201, 202, 203, right? Wouldn't be doing that, but 204, 205, 206, I could talk myself into it on the right team.
All right.
Rashad Penny's one of those
where
running
I'm at
backs
right now.
who we always call running backs league winners, or specific ones, right? Penny is in a position to where he could be that for a mid-second round pick. There's not a lot of running backs I could say the same thing about.
If you got a thin running back roster and you could get a starting running
first time
back
in his entire career.
He's had value before until he gets hurt. So we're going to hope, wish into existence that this year he doesn't get hurt. And maybe he won't with that really good Philadelphia Eagles O-line, that if you trade a 205 for him, you've just gotten yourself a starting running back.
There's 207. Okay, we're pushing the envelope. 205. I will cash out every single one of my Rashad Penny shares. I will put a bow on him and mail it first class. I will get that share off my roster.
Agreed. But just, roster construction, depending on how you're equipped, if you're in it to win now, we're talking a range there. There could be a value in getting Rashad Penny. His value has rose. We were not given a 205, 207, 20 anything for him a year ago.
No, so it has risen. And then, but again, the title of the episode, Dan, traps or values, then do you see it as a trap or value with his new inflated price?
I count him as a value now, but I could easily see the trap with an injury. But I'm gonna put, to have conviction, I'm gonna put him in the value category. I think in that Dan, Eagles line.
Well, hit us with some more conviction here with your next guy.
Oh boy, it's tough, but I'm going to try. All right. So my guy, and again, this is just a rising from the ashes. In the spirit of Easter, as you talked about, JB. Mike Gesicki was dead last year, just dead, but he goes to New England, who needs weapons, and Gesicki's a receiver. He's not a true tight end. The New England Patriots were dead last in red zone offense last year. He could be a really good red zone guy that gets some touchdowns and is treated like a receiver in a team that needs one really bad. Again, I'm not excited about Gesicki. I'm not necessarily going after him, but if it's cheap enough, throwing in a trade, fourth round pick, maybe a mid-late third, I'd be happy to get Gesicki in that muddled tight end position to help my roster.
I'm just laughing at some of the comments that Mitch has thrown up here. Wait, so you're saying that you might be willing to move a mid to late third for Mike Gesicki in a tight end premium league?
Depending on what my tight end situation looks like. You know, we always say we're going with the big tight ends, or we want to have like 3 of them on our roster to kind of rotate, play bye weeks, hope one of them, you know, has a good season. I put Gesicki into that late, you know, hey, if I'm building my roster around multiple tight ends, we're in tight end premium, I want to have 3 of them because I don't have a big stud. Gesicki might be in that mix of kind of a late draft value this year. I think he's rose where he was just completely dead a year ago.
Mitch, you're shaking your head, but I got to interject again. I don't know.
I'm shocked.
I don't know if it's because I've been off for a week and maybe that's it. My juices are flowing a little bit here, but nobody in a tight end premium league is going to, especially you mentioned Dan first, a 4th round draft pick. Nobody's thinking about moving him for a 4th. I'm not going to move Gesicki for a mid to late 3rd. So yeah, he may have risen in value a little bit overall, but you would see him then at the price point of 211. You'd say that's a trap for you then.
211. I still might buy JB. It's a little early. I'm still kind of dissecting the rookies, but when I look who I have here now, my confidence in rookies at 211's, I don't know. No, but I know come draft time, there's no way I'm going to move a 211 for Gesicki. But so yeah, I'd say that's probably a trap. But 3rd round pick, easy.
Man, we went from a 4th round pick to a late 2nd.
Well, I'm saying I want to start low and start the negotiation. You know the Coach Dan trades here. I'm starting low and then, you know,
Mitch, you're shaking your head over there about Mr. Gesicki.
I just can't. Like, how is he any different than Jonnu Smith? Like, is he better than Jonnu Smith in any way? Maybe he's a little bit better as a route runner, but I've seen this. I've been there with this offense. I just want absolutely no part of Mike Gesicki.
I think what's going to be interesting is trying to figure out right now, as we sit here in March, trying to figure out the involvement and the way they utilize Mike Gesicki and Juju Smith-Schuster and replacing Jacoby Myers. What is going to be the split out of the slot? Is Juju moved out wide more, which would make sense because of Mike Gesicki's heavy involvement, operating out of the slot historically. So for me, if Mike Gesicki is getting more slot work than maybe not as much as Jacoby was last year, but if he's hitting up there 50, 60%, that's going to, my ears are going to perk up a little bit, especially in 2 PPR. Now, if they try something different, Juju's gravitating more towards the slot, which I think is going to be better for Juju, even though we have seen, and he's not great out wide, but we have seen Juju through stretches perform quite well, even out wide. And I know you can look at all the different metrics and measurables, and it's not a comparison when looking at him, the slot versus out wide, but Juju can still produce. But then it comes into play. Do we see this offense throwing a lot more? Do we see them relying on Mac Jones? I don't know.
And I guess that's where I'm going with first Gesicki, seeing him being utilized in that slot. I seen it with Tua before the pre-Tyreek Hill days, where there were just certain games where Gesicki got peppered and got a bunch of targets. And then I'm looking at the uptick in touchdown production with that red zone offense being dead last, where I just could see a boost in production. And I think Bill O'Brien going in there could open things up a little bit. So that's why I had Gesicki, and if I could even skip ahead, I had Juju on my list at a 3-year, $33 million contract as being the guy. You know, hearing everything out of Kansas City that, you know, his teammates loved him, work ethic was good, fan base loved him, and he chose to go to New England. So I just see this offense evolving a little bit. Mac Jones doing a little bit better. Again, it's not an exciting list. These are not guys these aren't like Dan guys going into next year. But based on free agency and uptick from last year, I like these two. Where the Kansas City offense was so dispersed and spread out, I think a little more focus will go to these two.
We like whenever the targets are funneled through fewer options, right? That's where we start to get the more fantasy involvement, obviously. There's a great question in the chat from Alex. I want to hit on that once we get to another kind of lower tier running back that may have benefited from free agency. So mental note right there. We'll get back to it. Who had Darren Waller?
I had Darren Waller. I don't understand how you guys are so against this. Like, tight ends suck. Tight ends are horrible. What bringing up Mike Gesicki is like, hey, a value play, right? I mean, they're awful. But like we talk about these dudes, if they could stay healthy, if they can. Darren Waller has been injured the last 2 years, right?
Missed 14 games over the
did,
last 2
yeah.
seasons.
He was injured. If he could come back and be healthy, where does he go for you in tight ends? He's going to be top 5, maybe? Because you were just bringing up, John, how, we love to see passes funneled through Pacific. The Giants have nobody. I think they still have like Sterling Shepard. Then they pick up like Paris Campbell. They have nobody. So the
Wandale the Whale.
Exactly. And we love Darren Waller
Wandale.
back when he could have those 15, 17 target games. That's in his wheelhouse again. I can't name you 5 other tight ends that actually have that realistic of an outcome if the dude can stay healthy. He's only 30. He has had the injury bug, but I completely believe that he could. I just read a comment in chat.
Jeff in the chat says he hopes Mitch has a lot of IR slots for his Penny and Waller team.
Touche, Jeff. Touche.
Like, that's the thing, right? Everyone's down on these guys. So now is the time to go and get him. I love Waller. I love Waller just as much as I was just looking at your tiers, John. Probably right below the TJ Hawkinson, Dallas Goedert, and George Kittle tier. I like him right below that. And it was like, whoa, that's so high. Dude, if he can have one healthy year, he goes above all those guys, in my opinion.
So
He is.
But what's the difference from the beginning of last year then? That's the trouble I have with that, Mitch. Like he was a top guy to start last year.
Devontae Adams came and stole every single target there was for the Raiders.
The Raiders
That was pretty good, huh?
year,
that was pretty good.
Like I chalked last year up to injuries. If
Mm-hmm.
he's healthy this year, I think we get the Waller we expected last year.
That's what we need.
Darren Waller has missed 14 games over the last 2 seasons. He is entering his age 31 season. He turns 31 in September. Let me now listen.
I'm listening. You've said listen like 400
Listen.
times.
I'm going to mention his contract, okay? This is just an if, okay? I don't want to get yelled at again, like the Rashad Penny situation, the Penny debacle of 2023, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I just want to minimal dead cap if he's cut next off season with a post June 1 designation.
Mm-hmm.
Am I saying it's going to happen? No, I just wanted to point it out.
Okay.
I just wanted to make people aware. He's also going to an offense that, maybe he's going to do an offense that did not throw nearly as much, about 70 fewer attempts than the Raiders last year. Is that because of the weapons that were available to Daniel Jones? Possibly. Do we get Darren Waller with the hyper focus in terms of a target share? I don't know the answer to that. I don't know.
But that's the thing is now's the time to make the stand on that sort of guy. If everyone's still having him as the tight end 9, 10 in the league, and I have a lot of faith in him, so I'm more than happy to go and get him on most of my teams. I'm completely okay doing that because the tight end position is so bad that outside of Andrews, Kelsey, and Hawkinson and Goddard, like I don't like any of them.
Yeah,
Notice
I don't
I
have him
did
that
mention
low
Pitts.
though.
How fragile is Darren Waller's value, though? We just saw it.
It's true, but I think all of those tight ends are fragile. Anybody down below those 5 is really fragile, in my opinion.
Are you paying a late first in 2 PPR for Darren Waller?
Yep.
No.
Okay. You asked.
I mean, yeah, you're wrong. But I have been trying. I got to see if we're in any leagues where I have Darren Waller because I've been trying to unload him. And I can't get anywhere close to a late first value.
Well, I wouldn't be in a hurry to unload him if you're trying to win this year, unless that's a roster you're not trying to win now, John. Because Mitch,
do
I have him
points,
still in.
Do I get points from the IR? I don't know about what leagues you're in. I don't.
Why would you assume he's definitely going to be on the IR this year? The upside for him is so good. He
He
can land
sold
on the
his
IR
house.
and he still scores many of half the tight ends in our rankings because that
I
position's
saw a
so
blurb
terrible.
on Realtor.com that he sold his house because he permanently resides on the IR. Okay, and I really
Oh,
reached
no.
for that one. I know I reached
Oh,
for that
no.
one. That took me a while to set up. No, listen, I'm not saying. Of course, I'm being facetious with him and Penny in terms of the IR, and I'm kind of just playing off of Jeff's comment in the chat. But 2 years in a row, if we see another significant injury that knocks him out for a month or 2 months, again, that value at age 31, it's going to be very detrimental. I don't know if we're far off from what we saw with Zach Ertz once he had his injury last year. Granted, it was the ACL, but he's kind of teetering on that threshold there. I mean, just 2 years ago, Zach Ertz, he put up another very productive season.
I'm with Mitch though. I'm rolling the dice on Darren Waller.
For
And the
late
only
fir-
reason
for-
late
For
first,
late first,
tight end premium. If I don't have a good answer at tight end, that's an opportunity to win. That's a league winner. Could be
It
a league
is.
winner. And I believe in
Yep.
the Giants coaching staff too. So.
All right, so that's Darren Waller, man. All right, just so you know, we have 3 more categories to get through, and then I have about 30 players for rapid fire.
It's okay. The next one's going to go quick for me.
Same
Yeah,
here.
so we'll see.
This
All right.
is just touch a point.
Mitch, let's start with you. Newly signed free agents you believe should not have risen in value, but they might have. Trap.
Yeah, so I'm just going to say 2 wide receivers, and everyone's probably going to assume, oh, they didn't rise, but maybe they did in your leagues. It's Adam Thielen and Alan Lazard, just mainly because Alan Lazard, we know why he went to the Jets, because Rodgers wants him there, so that's why he went there. Adam Thielen, honestly, cannot name you another Panthers wide receiver right now.
Terrace Marshall.
I thought he was a tight end. But no, seriously, I can't. Terrence Marshall, that's the one, right? And so his volume should be good. You're going to see on a lot of projections that Adam Thielen's going to have pretty decent projections. He just is. But for me, I mean, if you could get a 3rd round for him, I'm moving him for a 3rd rounder. If I could get a 3rd rounder for Lazard, I'm moving Lazard. And you guys know I was really high on Lazard last year. It's if you could take this little bit of news that you get from those guys and move off of him, because there's never going to be a point in the future to where you're going to be able to move off them again, in my opinion.
We're going to see the narrative. The only reason that I think we could do something with Thielen in terms of trading Thielen in mid 3rd for maybe a mid to late 2nd, that's probably a pipe dream. But the only reason I think we might be able to see something is because we're going to constantly get the narrative. Well, we're going to have this rookie quarterback come in, and Adam Thielen is going to be that veteran presence that is going to garner targets and build that relationship. And he's going to be the safety valve. I think that narrative is going to be there. I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I actually agree with you on both of these. I think maybe we did see, Thielen went from being dead. There's a lot of death talk in this episode. Jeez. But Thielen went from that to, okay, maybe he can garner some volume and some production here in 2023. It was a 3-year deal. Have you seen the terms of the contract yet?
I haven't seen him yet. No.
Okay.
I'm not positive.
When he might be able to be cut. I know that's the bad buzzword tonight. But Alan Lazard, yeah, I don't think anybody's too excited there, but if you could dump him, like you said, for early to mid 3rd, boom, get him off your roster. Yeah. Dan, who do you got here in this category?
Before I answer the trap question, no need to talk about these guys, but I just had them on my list. I want to throw them out there for listeners. Newly signed free agents that you believe have risen in value. Sam Darnold, I'm just a little curious because I think they're going to give Trey Lance every chance, but I don't believe in him. And I don't believe in Purdy. I just think and he's coming off the injury. Sam could just be sneaky with all those weapons. So if you're in a quarterback desperate situation, he's not a bad guy to stash. And then Baker Mayfield, I'm like, I was so dead on this guy. He was dead to me. And then somehow he came to life with the Rams. Now he goes to that Tampa offense with Godwin and Evans. And so I'm a little bit intrigued. Again, these are just kind of stashes. as far as the trap game, agree with Mitch's. I would even couple Robert Woods in that category there. Again, we don't want those receivers that are 30 and declining, and you're not going to get anything a year or two for them. So get rid of them now if there is any spike there. But I'll go with a bigger splash name here as my opening guy and say DJ Moore. There's a lot of hype. There's a lot of excitement there. Fields, there's a lot of excitement, but I'm not convinced Justin Fields could throw yet. I have not seen him establish a wide receiver in the National Football League yet. I know Mooney may have been his best guy, but I have no proof or no indication or no John Bauer analytics that say DJ Moore is going to be a better receiver in Chicago.
Yeah, this is twofold for me, and just kind of overarching points with DJ Moore and with any player with a change of scenery. We always see, and I believe we talked about this on the pivot point this weekend, Mitch, that even if it is not necessarily a better situation, it's different. And people like whenever anything changes in fantasy football, players are traded, players are going off via free agency, but we want news. We want something to happen. And DJ Moore is one of those situations that, I mean, is it a better situation? Maybe a little bit. Is it a worse one? Maybe a little bit. I don't think you could look at this and say it's significantly better. So I'm looking at my tiers. He did not move at all for me, where he was versus where he is now. But he has risen based on trades that we've seen take place. So if you're going to sit there and have him as your wide receiver 18 in Dynasty right now, and I can move him for 107 or 108, that's something that I'd be willing to do, because it gives you increased flexibility. You're able to maneuver around a lot better and easier than having DJ Moore. And that's not anti-DJ Moore by any means. I just think the market is a little bit higher on him than I am. But to Dan's point, just any changing situation, generally, it sparks interest and there's a lot more trade volume. And then two, we're mentioning guys like Adam Thielen, Alan Lazard, Robert Woods, and you're probably thinking, oh my, nobody wants these guys. Nobody cares. But if you go on Twitter, go on Reddit, go anywhere, even in our Discord, because people are asking the questions, hey, should we be a little bit interested in Robert Woods this year? Not going out and blowing significant draft capital, but those questions are coming up because anytime a situation does change, we want to be able to quickly evaluate how this is really going to impact their value in production, because then we can go out to our leagues and get ahead of the curve. So even if it is a player that you're thinking as the listener, nobody's going to have an interest in this guy, you'd be surprised.
The interesting thing on Woods is I think someone in our Discord was kind of, in one of our discussions going to bat for Woods, saying second year off an injury. And where I struggle with Woods is pre-injury, when he was with the Rams, McVay, the 1 year, thought about moving him for Julio, some kind of trade. It didn't quite happen, but the Rams were thinking about getting off him then. His game seemed like it was on the decline. And then he goes and blows out his knee and didn't look like anything last year. And so you hit age 30, you're on the decline before the injury. I'm out on him.
Yeah, Woods would be a guy that if I could do Woods in a fourth for a third. These aren't sexy moves by any means, but you're able to move up in your draft. You're able to free up a roster spot. You're able to accumulate value, and it's a small win, but hey, it's a win nonetheless. All right.
And higher end question for you both, JB and Mitch, other than Robert Woods. Going back to DJ Moore, do you have him higher or lower than George Pickens?
I am in the same exact tier.
Yeah, I think about the same.
I have a couple shares. I was trying to get Pickens and trying to maneuver something, and I wasn't having much success. So just curious.
I honestly think right now, based on you were trying to move Pickens for DJ
trying to move
Moore?
more. No, trying to get Pickens.
What were you looking for a plus there with Pickens?
Like slight, like a 2 for 2 and get a slight. But then I was going down, and then I got the comment from, and it was a healthy conversation, but they said they actually liked Pickens more than Moore. So I was like, oh man, I don't have a chance.
That's surprising to me, because overall in the market, I don't think it's always more difficult whenever you have a player rostered because you get those blinders a little bit. I mentioned that in the chat, actually. I think verbatim, we're talking about
Sure.
having blinders on. But okay, Mitch, players on a roster, they did not move.
Oh, you're not
sorry.
skipping categories yet, are you? Don't skip
I did go to the
categories
next
yet.
one.
I have one more that I feel strong about.
Throw it at me.
And I know I listed some names, but Deontay Foreman. And I'm a Deontay Foreman, kind of a truther over the years. He's kind of been a guy I liked. And I want to give some credit I listened to the GM Shuffle on occasion there with Michael Lombardi. And his son was a coach with Carolina last year with Foreman. And one thing he talked about was Foreman. And I think this is helpful for our listeners. Doesn't practice a lot. This is the wear and tear from the style of way he runs. He is not often available for practice versus the teams. And he thinks that's a problem, especially as the season goes along. And then I looked at his contract. I'm thinking 1 year's $3 million. It kind of just made me think Herbert's more the guy. And then, they also signed Travis Homer, who could be a, reception guy. I don't know if Tariq Cohen's going to rise from the dead. Speaking of Easter again, JP, and our talks tonight.
He's not rostered anywhere.
But I think people saw the Bears got Foreman, and everybody kind of liked him because he's a good runner to watch. He had some good success last year. But I think for Dynasty, based on that contract, thinking, it could be Herbert, they still could draft somebody, and then getting that little nugget of information that he doesn't practice and he wears out as the year goes along. And he keeps switching teams. No one's keeping him.
So for you, one of the red flags there is the 1 year, $3 million.
That's one of the flags, the contract, although that's kind of a theme with running backs, but it makes them more susceptible, I think, to lose that job. Like, I'm looking for some security in Dynasty. Go ahead, try to reel me in here.
I'm reeling you in because that is more than twice as much as Rashad Penny's making this year. I'm just getting your
got him.
That's a good one. That's definitely
I had
a
to
good
set
one.
you up for that one. Yeah. So Dan,
I think Penny was a leveraged deal, though. It was a leveraged deal. They knew he didn't have any leverage, but I think they'll stand behind Penny, and it's a little better situation. Foreman, we got a little more inside information.
So Dan, straight up, you would take Penny over Foreman.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Now can we move on?
Yes, sir.
Because I've been trying to.
There are some other running backs I feel too, but Alexander Madison, that was a little disappointment. He didn't go anywhere. People might think Cook's leaving and he's coming back, but age 24, he can only fetch 2 years, $7 million. I mean, I guess that's okay, but
yeah. All right. Players on a roster that were positively impacted by a free agent leaving. Mitch.
Christian Watson. Just having Lazard out of that room is awesome. I still love him. With Jordan Love, that's kind of the biggest worry, right? Is how is he going to play with Jordan Love? But there's no one on the team that I'm worried about. Romeo Dobbs, I don't think is actual someone to worry about. The comments in the chat tonight are hilarious.
They're fantastic.
But it's just with Christian Watson, he's someone to where like people bring up DJ Moore, right? I don't want any more DJ Moore on my teams. I've had it. I've seen it. I know where it's going to go. Christian Watson is a guy to where we could actually see him exceed value to where I don't want to call him like the Amon-Ra St. Brown, but we kind of saw Amon-Ra slowly come on later in his rookie year, right? We saw that a lot. Christian Watson did fairly well. He was horrible early, then started showing more and more potential as the year went on. And I don't expect to see Christian Watson being a top 10 dynasty wide receiver, but top 20, I could see that. And with how those skill positions are set up on the Packers now, I think Christian Watson is a great buy.
A lot of people, I think, would already have Christian Watson as top 20. So I don't know if you're that far off. I don't know.
That's the trouble I have.
Far off. Who had Khalil Herbert?
Well, John doesn't have him that high. Just saying.
I had him on the list, and yeah, I think we both had him, right, Mitch?
Yeah,
that's another mutual one there.
Don't you guys feel though, like you talk about Deontay Foreman? Don't you feel like they kind of do similar things?
Foreman's a bruiser, man, and I mean, maybe I worry a little bit, do they give him red zone work? I'm not sure, but I think Montgomery was the guy. It was a very talented running back. So you replace a very talented running back with a guy like Foreman, who, again, if we're worried about him wearing out late in the season and he's going to be the number 2, I think Herbert goes from the number 2 running back or whatever he was to 1B, however you want to classify him last year, to having a little bit more of a prominent role with Chicago. I think he definitely benefited and is younger, and I think they'll keep him for a while.
That sample that I spoke about earlier with Rashad Penny and the targets per route run, Deontay Foreman and Khalil Herbert, they actually both ranked bottom 7 in the same exact sample. So out of 64 players, they were in that 57 to 64 spot, 58 to 64 spot. And, I think Travis Homer, as of now, as it stands, fills that pass catching role. And we're going to see some Deontay Foreman and Herbert sprinkled in terms of the passing game. But if Deontay Foreman stays healthy, I think it's going to impact Khalil Herbert a lot more than people might want to think. And whenever Khalil Herbert, or let me say, whenever David Montgomery first was signed by your Detroit Lions, Mitch, I think there was a lot of hype around Khalil Herbert, and there's a lot of excitement. Yeah. And we're talking about different values, and I'm blasting out trade offers based on the conversations that we're having in our Discord, part of the Dynasty Theory Patreon, $5 a month, free for the rest of March. Check that out. Jake says Foreman averaged half a yard more per carry than Monty last year. Whoa, whoa. But then I'm starting to see the rejections lining up and the trades that some people are getting done. So then I went from, in a matter of less than a week, being completely against Khalil Herbert at cost. Now I'm really not that far off from that 2-0. Where is he? Around 201 from a value perspective.
Oh,
which is
my
absurd.
Lord.
But I personally have not seen him trade anywhere close to that. Right?
Yeah. I was just going to say, I think he is like the ultimate trap right now in all of the NFL, of all of like these running backs that are getting hype, that are getting signed by different teams. Herbert is the biggest trap there is. They could draft someone to replace him. They could sign someone off the streets to replace him. He is just so replaceable, in my opinion, that I'm completely, especially at 201, 202, 203 price. I'm loving, especially if you're tight end premium, I'm going to be loving the tight ends you could get in that price range in the draft. There's just no possible way I'm anywhere close to that with him.
It's just there's so many running backs that are entering through the NFL draft that could cause problems for a lot of running backs.
Just not Rashad Penny. He's fine.
He's fine, obviously.
Yeah.
But, it's not just avoiding Bijan. There are 6, 7 other running backs that would present a problem if going day 2. So we're talking Bijan, we're talking Gibbs, we're talking Charbonnet, A-Chain, Tyjae Spears, Zach Evans. I even think Chase Brown now, based on what I'm seeing, is going to slip into that end of day 2. I'm praying that Sean Tucker, Kendra Miller, and Tank Bigsby get in there. I don't know if they do. Then all the stuff with Sean Tucker. And I heard he's up for an Oscar for his directorial debut based on the film that he just put together. That was top notch. But there are plenty of options entering the draft. And then I'm not saying they're by any means fantastic at this point in their careers, but Zeke could eat into something. And I mean, that makes sense because, Plotter, he's just eating, whatever. That was a stretch too, man. I'm getting tired, I think. But Fournette, maybe that's somebody that could eat into the work a little bit. That would have been a better one. Kareem Hunt, he's still out there. So guys that, again, not fantastic, but could impact some of these guys if they are to land a job where one of your favorite running backs are sitting based on what we've seen so far in free agency. All right, Dan, who do you got in this category?
Hey, just closing up on Herbert, I think he's one of those guys, as we said, March 20th today, it makes sense based on, I think, what we know. Definitely potential for a trap. I know in the chat, Jake said Foreman averaged half a yard more carry than Monty last year. That Carolina run game was legit at times last year. So there was some nice heavy volume there. But the guy I like.
Time.
What?
I was just reminded. This is what Jake. Thank you. So Alex's comment in the chat from earlier that I'd mentioned. Mitch, I want your thoughts here. Running backs are important to fantasy, and besides a few becoming irrelevant to NFL teams, is it now just a quantity versus quality, even for dynasty managers?
Man, that's hard. The correct answer is probably yes. It's probably quantity over quality. But for me, I still want those studs. Like, I still want Christian McCaffrey, Barkley, soon to be Bijan. I still want those guys on my teams because I don't like playing who am I going to start this week at running back and trying to guess. And then I miss the Dante Foreman, when he goes off for 80 yards and 3 touchdowns, and I miss that sort of game. I still want the studs, like without a shadow of a doubt, as much as it is more and more of the NFL teams are just going to, no, the word's escaping me. Multiple backfields.
Yep.
By committee?
By committee. That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah, exactly. There's just so many committee backfields now to where that probably is how it's going to be. But if there's that many committee backfields, how much more valuable do those bell cow backs become? And that's the line you have to kind of take in Dynasty right now, in my opinion.
And
I was just going to say, go ahead, Dan.
I was going to say, I think you could have your cake and eat it too. I'm with Mitch, and I like to have that bell cow back, at least one. But I think you still want to try to build up your bench and a good chunk of your roster with as many of those other guys as you can. Because I still prefer to build my dynasty team around a young receiver that I'm going to get a lot more years than the running back that I'm going to get one contract out of. If I'm lucky, we get 2. So, the guys like McCaffrey and Barkley and that Mitch is naming, you hope to get 2 contracts out of those guys because they're the elite of the elite. So I definitely want to have them. I like Mitch's take there, but I think you still want to build as many of those other guys as you can.
I agree with Dan overall here because there are, I agree with Mitch too, though, because yes, if you can get those absolute studs, and like you said, that the NFL is gravitating more and more towards all of these committees across the board. Well, now those guys that are getting bell cow type roles are going to be even more valuable, asterisk, if they stay healthy. But I think once we get towards the middle tiers and maybe even starting, running back 12-ish, we're talking about, you can get into your Swifts, your Chubbs, your Javantes, your Rashad Whites, Damian Pierce, Ramondre Stevenson, Tony Pollard. Maybe that's where then we start to split those guys up. So like Dan said, have your cake and eat it too. You have your bell cow backs. If you have them rostered, great. Hopefully you're able to get them in your rookie drafts. Or you start to split up, just a Nick Chubb for a Pacheco, Brian Robinson, and something, whatever the case may be. So now you're filling your bench with these usable assets. And even if you have the lower end guys like a Jamal Williams, you're going to know when to use him, especially in New Orleans, if Alvin Kamara is suspended. Hopefully he finds himself usage and workload, but we could fill in a Deontay Foreman if Khalil Herbert goes down and they don't draft another running back. Boom. Now you essentially know when to use these guys, and that's when they become a little bit more valuable. So I think that's a fantastic question, and I think there is a fine line to walk where you can kind of go both ways, and as Dan said, have your cake and eat it too. So hopefully you kind of answer that a little bit.
JB, if I could give one more player that just I think fits into that conversation of the bigger name back, and I try to find something really like that no one's thinking about or talking about in this name that I added to the list. And I think a guy that has benefited from free agency, we're not talking about the offensive lineman, man. And the Pittsburgh Steelers added a very solid guard in Isaac Seumalo from the Philadelphia Eagles. And then they also added Nate Herbig for a guard from the New York Jets. So they're bolstering that interior line. You get Kenny Pickett, who's going to have another year under his belt of knowing how to read defenses and put the team in good plays. Pickens, evolves another year. They still have the draft. The Pittsburgh Steelers might get that run game going again for Najee Harris. So I believe Najee Harris goes up a little bit in value, and no one's talking about him. And he lost a little luster, he might be a sneaky guy to get.
Mitch is talking about him because he hates him. All right. Do either of you feel, oh, really quick, James Cook, I think he benefits overall because ranked 5th in targets per route run as a running back. Singletary leaving, who took up 373 routes last year. For context, Saquon Barkley was at 379. Singletary was at 0.75 yards per route run and didn't demand any targets. There's a very real chance, I think, James Cook, with Damian Harris being in that backfield with him, as long as he avoids something crazy in the draft, there's a very real chance he sees 70 targets this year. And in 2022, that would have tied for 8th among running backs. So nothing to scoff at. I think Damian and James Cook could have a role in that offense. But again, let's get through the next 5 weeks and hopefully things play out well for James Cook.
Could be a trap too, though, because you still got Nyheim Hines. And that Bills, like for years, we're waiting for the Bills running back situation to be something good because we love the Bills offense. And that Bills running game, I don't know. So I don't disagree, JB, but I would just proceed with caution.
I think Nyheim Hines is far more valuable to them in the return game than taking up my James Cook targets. All right.
He started to get targets late, though.
Do either who?
I can
Nyheim
just see,
Hines.
I can just see the
Nyheim,
running back
like,
coach in Buffalo right now being, no, we can't use Nyheim Hines. He's too valuable on our kick returns. I love it.
You say he was getting targets. He had 9 targets in 9 games in Buffalo.
Were they all at the end? Like he just seemed to be more involved, or at least like play designs to him late last year. Maybe it's, I don't know, playoffs or seemed to get more involved.
Playoffs.
That's going.
Let's see here. Targets.
And it's his year 2 with the team. You know, he
Week
was a
18,
midseason
0
trade.
targets. Week 16, 2. Week 15, 1.
Ooh.
Week 14, 1. Playoffs. Oh, maybe it was in the playoffs. No, he had 3 targets in 2 games combined. Anyway, do either of you feel overly passionate about this last topic, or can I throw some rapid fire at you for about 5 minutes?
I'll mix mine into final thoughts. It's all right.
All right, Dan, you good?
Same. Good.
All right, rapid fire. I'm going to give you a player who, for one reason or another, has benefited from free agency, or maybe impacted might be the better word, or a pick. 12-team Superflex, 2 PPR. We're just going to go Dan. We'll go Mitch, Dan, Mitch, Dan, Mitch, Dan, all the way through. All right. Jordan Love or 109.
109.
109.
Derek Carr 110.
110.
Derek Carr.
Aaron Rodgers or 111.
111.
111.
Jimmy Garoppolo or 201.
201. Yes.
Yeah, you know, I'm going back to Jordan Love and I'm taking Jimmy Garoppolo. Just give me the quarterbacks.
Baker Mayfield or 210.
No, 210.
Oh, give me Baker.
Gardner Minshew or 212.
212.
212.
Kyle Trask or 304.
304.
304.
Jacoby Brissett or 309.
I could see Brissett. I could take Brissett there.
309.
Tony Pollard or 106.
106.
106.
Ramondre Stevenson or 107.
107. Dan.
Ramondre.
DeAndre Swift or 108.
108.
108.
Damian Pierce, and this is going to be Damian Pierce or 112.
112, and I hope Dan answers this one correctly now.
Damian Pierce.
Miles
I'm in
Sanders,
on him.
Miles Sanders or 109.
Wow, really? 109.
109.
David Montgomery or 201.
201.
201.
Alvin Kamara or 201.
Oh, 201.
201.
Mitch, have you taken every pick except Jacoby Brissett?
No, I took David Montgomery, right?
No, you took 201.
Oh, crap. My bad. I meant David Montgomery. Sorry. My bad, everybody.
especially to the Detroit Lions nation.
James Cook or 201?
James Cook. I could buy into JB's narrative here.
Oh God, that's torture, JB.
Dan doesn't have any 201s. He should just be picking the player every single time.
Today,
Right? I'll go 201.
Khalil Herbert. You scoffed at the price point earlier. Khalil Herbert or 203?
203.
203. I'm going back to James Cook.
Jamal Williams or 205?
205.
205.
Let's see. Rashad Penny or 207?
Rashad Penny.
Penny at that point. It's close.
Damian Harris or 210?
210.
210.
Devin Singletary or 210?
210.
210.
Garrett Wilson or 102?
102.
102.
Chris Olave or 103?
Yeah, Chris Olave.
Threshold. 103.
DJ Moore or 107?
107.
Oh boy. 107.
I was going to say, Dan, weren't you the one that brought up DJ Moore as a trap? That the value is too high? Anyway.
You are, but like 101 to 106 is my sweet spot. When we get to 107, I'm hoping someone slides. Like it depends how it goes.
Christian Watson or 107?
Christian Watson.
Chris Godwin or 108?
108.
108.
Calvin Ridley or 112?
112. Hammer.
And Trevor Lawrence and T-Law, I believe. Give me Calvin Ridley.
We need a soundtrack of Dan's noises. He's become a Frenchman over here. Juju or 202?
202.
202.
Elijah Moore or 204?
204.
Sorry.
Jacoby Myers or 208?
Jacoby Myers.
208.
That whole thing only took 2 minutes.
Pretty good.
Hopefully I'm not saying that elsewhere. Anyway,
That was stressful.
you guys ready for some final thoughts?
Final thoughts.
Dan, 196th time post free agency, traps and values. I hope we were able to provide some context as to where these players, maybe some of them are the picks that we were talking about. It's the tipping point, and that's where we kind of see the point of indifference and you get some ideas sparked. But anyway, Dan, what do you got for our listeners?
So I'll go rapid fire final thoughts here. We didn't touch on negative players that were negatively impacted by signings. I'll just touch on the tight end position because it's such a frustrating, weak position as it is. And like, there's like a few guys that, I'm not saying we were high on, but they had a heartbeat and then they had someone else sign with them. So now it's like two good tight ends competing for targets. So, my heart, Tommy Tremble, he's not trembling anymore. I think Carolina needs to move him. Hunter Henry, with Gesicki going there, and then Cole Kmet, now has competition in Chicago. So the tight end position took a dent. And then just one note I put in the Discord tonight. I do it one time a year, little non-football note going with the charity. April 29th, we have this Purple Stride across the country. There's like 60 chapters that have it. We host one here in Scranton, PA. Lost my dad to pancreatic cancer. So every year I just post one time. I don't heckle anyone, just post in the Discord. If anyone would like to contribute, it's near and dear to me, and it helps a lot of patients. It's only a 12% survival rate for pancreatic cancer. So it helps some patients and caregivers. It goes a long way. I saw a few people already donated tonight, man. My heart goes out to you. Thank you.
Yeah, I know you're heavily involved in that, so that's a fantastic cause. Mitch, what do you got?
So following that with Dan, I'm not going to talk about a player, but yeah, donate to pancreatic cancer.
Mitch is like, all right, so charity's out of the way. Let's talk about OJ
Let's
Howard.
break down Kyle Pitts and why I hate him.
Well, I think this could Dan's ears make them perk up a little bit. Jake Ferguson, maybe? Fergalicious?
I like Fergie in Dallas. I liked him last year. I really was pretty confident Dalton Schultz was leaving because of the way Dallas felt about him. And you watch him last year. He does really well after the catch, probably better than Dalton Schultz yards after catch. He's a tough guy to tackle, and it was only his rookie year. There's some upside there, and he could block decent too. So you don't necessarily have to take him off the field. He's got a lot of potential.
Yeah, I think this time of year, it's important to keep in mind again. There's a whole wave of rookies coming in, and they are going to throw some wrenches into your plans for whatever players you might be higher on than market or vice versa. So while you may have your values and your thoughts and your convictions, just be a little careful whenever you're going through your trades and you're talking through things, and hopefully you have a nice community like the Dynasty Theory Discord to talk things through. For Mitch Sorensen, Dan Lamagna, I'm John Bauer. We hope everybody enjoyed the show. We'll catch everybody next week.